welcome to another episode of The Metal Voice.
On today's show?
Today's show, it's a little bit more of a somber atmosphere around here because we're dedicating this show to the 1-year anniversary of the death of Ronnie James Dio, a man that's had tremendous influence on the metal community, on myself, on Jim, and all who he touched our hearts throughout the 40-something years that they performed and sang for us. So again, that's why I'm wearing this shirt that fit me at one time that no longer
Shows
does.
the jacket that doesn't fit
and then,
anymore.
of course, the other part of the ensemble from the 80s that's seen better days, and I won't even attempt to put on the jean jacket, but again,
it's like,
you know, hey Jim, I remember what's funny is, I remember up on the wall you had The Who, you had Iron Maiden and everything, but no, who did I go and to choose to wear this on my jacket for years afterwards? The one and only Ronnie James Dio.
I just want to tell you right away, Alan, he affected our lives because we grew up with his music.
Right.
His music was a soundtrack to our youth.
And again, Jim, one of the first songs that I ever heard of Dio was Man on the Silver Mountain, of course, with his Rainbow years. And, great albums. These are all classic albums. Richie Blackmore's Rainbow. Then you've got Rising. On Stage, which is 3 albums into their career. They launch a double live album.
Long Live Rock and Roll.
And Long Live Rock and Roll, his last album with them, which I think is their best album.
Yeah.
And again, I think he's been mismaligned in the press and with general impressions throughout his career.
Then he went to Black Sabbath.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that was really dedicated to his music, that wasn't afraid to tell the way he was. But again, with Rainbow, Richie Blackmore wanted to go a little bit more in a commercial direction. It was his band, so what Richie wanted, Richie usually got. And Dio was honest enough to say, sorry, you want to do love songs? I don't do that. Thanks very much. I'm moving on. And
bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And like you said, he went to join Black Sabbath, and actually, we spoke about this before, relaunched their entire career with 2 phenomenal albums.
And that's where I got it, Neon Nights. That's the songs of our youth, and Neon Nights.
The Mob Rules.
And then they toured with Mob Rules and Live Evil, which was, competing with Speak of the Devil at the time. And that's what got me into Ronnie James Dio. From there,
the very first album Dio launched of his own band, being Holy Diver. And I remember Jim listening to the first single off of that album, which was Rainbow in the Dark. So you got the heaviness, you got the drums of the Black Sabbath area, but you got the cheesy keyboard, which at the time sounded great. Now you can see where Dio probably got a little fed up of playing that song. But again, they had the keyboards from the Rainbow era.
You know what you don't see in bars or bands never really cover a lot of Dio. You know why? It's not because they don't like the music. It's because nobody sounds like Dio but Dio. He's got this really thick voice. It's high yet it's low, and he's just it's like a sweet spot.
He had a range
he's got a high range, but it sounds really low. So when you try to attempt to sing it, you just can't. And you know what I also remember, Alan, about Dio, and since we are remembering Dio, I remember reading an article about Dio back in the first album, second album. He said something like, I have too many things to do and I don't want to sleep anymore, so I'm only going to sleep 5 hours a day.
Yeah, I remember.
I'm only going to sleep 5 hours a day so I can accomplish everything that I want to accomplish. And he did. Right? He did.
And again, that was probably his classic period with the Holy Diver. Last in Line, I think that's his second album, was probably stronger than the first.
I think I like his first album better, but you're right. They're fantastic albums, both of them.
The Sacred Heart. I mean, we were talking about this earlier, Jim, about the production values.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, at one point, they got criticized for it, but now you go to see a band and all you have is a flag maybe hanging in the background. Back then, Dio's Sacred Heart tour had a dragon that came out.
And just so everybody knows, this tour, what happened was his production was so massive, he had to repeatedly go back to cities to pay off the dragons, the mechanical dragons.
I remember Dio dressed like a little elf with pulls out this huge sword, which is literally twice the size, to slay this dragon during that tour. So again, it was a great show. It was like you said, Jim. It's from the '80s, and that's what people put the money into the production to give a better show to their fans. That's what it was all about.
And then Dream Evil.
All
the Fools Sailed Away.
Yeah, there you go.
That is it's not his best album, but just that track alone, worth the money.
And again, if you think back, and I think the tributes are going to come out, there'll be a tribute album released this year, but a lot of people that knew the man, I mean, here's a guy that Lips, and in his book of Anvil, the story of Anvil, out of nowhere, goes to a festival. Everybody's there at this festival. He feels a tap on his shoulder. Turns around, here's Ronnie James Dio that walks up and says, "Hi, Lips, how's it going?" So I think this whole thing about him being a little bit of a dictator, that was just, with past misfeelings with some certain former employers. But I think people that know the man and the dedications we hear constantly about him, that just shows you what type of person he is. Sam Dunn, who did A Headbanger's Journey, he got along so well with him, he invited him back to his house. Dio invited Sam Dunn back to his house, and they did a whole segment of the movie.
The devil horns. He invented the devil horns. Or did Gene Simmons invent the devil horns? Or was it Ronnie James Dio? Or Gene Simmons? We don't know.
And again, to go back to the character of the man, which is a lot of the tributes you read afterwards. Not only was he a great musician and a great lyricist and one of the greatest voices of metal of all time, but hearing aid. At the time with Ethiopia, we were getting from Britain dedications, and We Are the World with the States, Tears Are Not Enough from Canada. He came out with the heavy metal version, a song called Stars. It was an album with Motorhead was on it, Y&T, Kiss,
Jeff Tate.
But the whole song itself was written by Ronnie James Dio, and the band was Hearing Aid. So a little play on words.
I could see Dio in the control room. Can you all you guys sound like me a little bit?
The guys from
Can you do your best impersonation of me, please? Thank you.
Rob Halford, Jeff Tate.
Yeah.
They were all there, and
great song.
It was initiated and instigated by Ronnie James Dio. Yeah. And so all the money and the benefits went towards Ethiopia.
And it was the best song, actually. Of all those sort of like hearing aid songs, it was the best.
Solo after solo after solo. What's fun is you sit there and you listen to it.
Yeah, well, I like the short version of it. I mean, I couldn't sit through the 7 minutes of solo guitar solos.
It's the best part. You got to say, okay, well, that's George Lynch. No, that's definitely Malmsteen. It was fun. Then you got Adrian Smith and Dave Murray on it. So everybody that was hot at the time played on that album.
All I remember is Rob Halford's voice.
Exactly.
It's like this high note. He's hitting, we're stars.
Kevin DuBrow's in it.
It's him. Kevin DuBrow's in it, yeah.
So he's the one with the pink jacket that stood out amongst the crowd.
Yeah, you can't miss him.
Okay, and then of course, Lock Up the Wolves.
Lock Up the Wolves. That's
Angry
a great
Machines.
Song. Angry Machines. Strange Highways.
Strange Highways. Then Angry Machines. Then Magica, a concept album that nobody talks about. It's like the buried treasure in the Dio chest.
Yeah, I like Magica. And at the end of Magica, he tells the whole story of Magica. Yeah. Very bizarre story, but nevertheless, very interesting story.
Then with Killing the Dragon, Masters of the Moon.
I like Masters of the Moon.
Then he rejoined Heaven and Hell.
Yeah, great. And The Devil You Know.
The Devil You Know.
Which we spoke about like last time.
So again, and then after his death, they released Live at Donington, 2 performances from the early 80s and the later 80s of his 2 performances live at the Castle Donington Festival.
And just so you know, it's not like your typical live album. If you listen to the whole album, it's like his concert is like one big song. It's like a continuation.
Right. So
I recommend that CD. It's really cheap. It's not that expensive. You could find it in most stores. When you're listening to it, you think you're at a Ronnie James Dio show.
So, we're releasing this in time for the first anniversary of his death to celebrate the man, his music, and he'll be forever in our hearts and in our thoughts and in our prayers. So again, we're dedicating the show to his family and all the fans out there that enjoyed his music as much as we did throughout all these years. So again, rest in peace, Ronnie James Dio. So that wraps up another special edition of The Metal Voice, dedication to Ronnie James Dio. Upon the first anniversary of his death. You can reach us at www.themetalvoice.com is our website, or email us at
themetalvoice@gmail.com.
We really appreciate all your letters, and again, thanks for tuning in. See you soon.